So it's been a turbulent day and a half or so in the Call of Duty world. One moment everyone's sharing their favorite clips from the beta, the next they're gearing up for a story trailer, and the following moment they're in disbelief at the moves pulled with the Spec Ops Survival and the rumored MTX shift with content and supply drops. There's been a lot to discuss about all of this. I've touched on it a little bit in the past 2 days, but really the full scope of everything wasn't entirely out there, and I had a feeling there'd be something that comes up that expands on the story a little bit more. So today, I wanted to talk about just that. I wanted to talk about microtransactions and the fate of supply drops and everything else that we've seen in the last, again, 36, 48 hours or so that may have you scratching your head a little bit or may have you a little bit upset. So today, I don't know if there's a true itinerary for how we'll take this video, any sort of format. I'm just gonna let it flow, and I'm just gonna talk about everything that we see here, from the problems themselves, developer updates and discussion here that have actually gone live since then, and just the overall thoughts that I personally have as well. So that said, let's start with the exclusivity. This was announced with the State of Play story trailer for Modern Warfare's campaign, and it was actually only seen in that variation, which makes me wonder, was it even supposed to go live with that trailer? Was it supposed to be something that happens with the Spec Ops trailer and not really the campaign? Was it something that was supposed to be a soft launch of that announcement? I don't know, but it was something that was definitely curious, because if you go to the official Call of Duty channel and you check out the post-trailer sequence, or over to the official Twitter account of Call of Duty with, again, that posted trailer on Twitter, you'll see the post-trailer sequence being in relation to digitally pre-ordering and getting that XRK weapons pack, which is a tag team of custom weapon blueprints exclusive for pre-orders on consoles, so you don't see that exclusivity announcement anywhere in there. But in that State of Play announcement after the trailer went live, it's the same trailer that we saw on the official YouTube channel, Twitter, elsewhere, but just with a different ending sequence. It showcased the announcement of Spec Ops Survival, the returning wave-based survival mode from Modern Warfare 3 that is a subdivision of Spec Ops, accompanied with a message that it would only be available on PlayStation 4 for almost an entire year after the launch. From October 25th of 2019 to October 1st of 2020, Survival's only going to be playable for those on PlayStation 4. Naturally, this definitely caught everybody's attention and was a huge talking point, something that was, of course, rightfully so, met with a lot of backlash, a lot of why in the world is this even considered, let alone happening. And it took a little bit of time to be officially mentioned in any capacity, whether from the official Infinity Ward social platforms or anyone associated with the studio. But Ashton Williams, senior communications manager at Infinity Ward, posted over on Reddit a thread saying, "Lots of discussion and reactions to yesterday's news about Spec Ops. We know you have questions and we want to clarify. To be clear, our all-new Spec Ops mode will be releasing on all platforms on October 25th. We're looking forward to revealing Spec Ops on October 8th. When we launch on October 25th, everyone on all platforms will be getting Modern Warfare, which includes campaign, the all-new Spec Ops mode, and the entirety of MP, which is a massive experience we've worked to create. Spec Ops Survival is an additional classic mode that will be available on PlayStation 4. We've made many changes this year with the goal to make the entire experience better for all of Call of Duty's community, including no season pass, cross-play across all platforms, and that all post-release maps and modes will be coming to all platforms at the same time. We understand that some still may be disappointed to not be able to play the classic Spec Ops Survival Day 1. We hear you. Please know that we're working hard to make this the best Call of Duty we've ever made and the best experience possible for fans." Additionally, Taylor Kurosaki, the studio narrative director, chimed in a couple of different replies to tweets at him asking about this and provided a little bit more clarity, saying that you can play Spec Ops in every new bit of content that we drop day 1, the only timed exclusivity of Survival, which is a sliver of Spec Ops. Other things, including a since deleted tweet, ended up saying that that's the whole point, that there is no other content that's exclusive for any duration, full stop. So the first thing that I feel is necessary to mention, and is just a side note, is that this stuff is well above the pay grades of anyone at Infinity Ward. This isn't something that the faces of the studio that are interacting with and trying to get as much feedback from the community as possible have any say in that. So if there's any frustration or anything like that, they're in the same boat as you guys. They don't like it. It's their vision being tainted with this kind of stuff that ultimately in some way or another hurts the player, whether big or small. The people making these statements, rebuttaling, are the ones that are in the trenches getting their hands dirty making the game. not the business decisions. But that said, this thing exclusivity-wise may have been done with good intentions in mind, as asinine as that sounds, but we've since again learned with this official feedback that this was the trade-off of all DLC now being the exact same time release across all platforms. No week, no month, nothing like that. Maps, weapons, missions, and all at the same time for the first time in Call of Duty's history to my recollection. No more Xbox or PlayStation dominance and waiting, except for that survival. But here's the thing, even though if it was done with good intentions, it's still a double-edged sword. We get that DLC at the same time, but 2/3 of the player base doesn't get to experience a part of the game until just before the launch of the next Call of Duty title, which is absurd. Call of Duty doesn't have a lasting impression on player bases. It's not as bad as I'd say as things like NHL, FIFA, Madden, or 2K, where it's annualized entirely and all support is dropped on the past title, but it's close enough for a large wave of that similar effect. At the time of Xbox One and PC getting their hands on survival, it's already time when most people stop caring, and sure, it's a smaller mode, it accounts for a fraction of the game, but that's like saying that players on Xbox One and PC would just now be getting access to things like gauntlets and zombies, or something smaller like that that would be a subdivision of it. And sure, you may not care to begin with, but you certainly wouldn't care now. I mean, go to anything, any outlet that talks about this, even here on the videos that we talked about, the brand new operation for Black Ops 4, which is an entire game update, and people will still comment, dead game, people still play this question mark, and the snooze emojis, everything you could think of. People really don't care about a mode then, so holding it off just is absurd. It doesn't make any sense. But even further, the biggest issue is the principle of it, the precedent that this sets. It shows that they're even willing to put that on the table, and that with a big enough paycheck, portions of the game could go by the wayside. It's just dangerous. It's not something that, for the health of the game overall, the franchise, and the gaming industry, is something you ever want to see. As big or as small as it may be, it's a dangerous precedent. Even for me, someone who tries to be as objective as possible, who doesn't care for the extracurriculars too much and just wants to go head down and grind out the core game, I probably won't touch survival more than a couple of times, but it's still messed up. And that's only half the stuff that people were upset about, and again, rightfully so, out of the last couple of days. Supply drops is something that was brought to the forefront once again for the discussion of this. We talked about it probably in passing whenever the first weekend of the beta rolled around, but there was something that showcased that a supply drop was in that post-match recap where it showcased your progression and what you unlocked. I think Nero's Cinema was the first one to find this, or at least first to find it and report on that I saw. But then after this announcement of the exclusivity, the gaming revolution, who's gotten a ton of stuff right in terms of leaks and what's been up on deck for Modern Warfare, ended up tweeting, who wants 300 plus emotes and supply drops, who wants 500 plus titles, who wants over 200 sprays and supply drops, yay, 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 yay. And that weapons are coming too, forget any cosmetic only malarkey. They're literally changing so much. They had a fair system with salvage and then they just remove it. I hope something changes by release. Now, I'll be totally honest with you, we knew supply drops were gonna be a thing. We knew there's already a metric ton of content already labeled as customizable, such as things that we discussed in yesterday's video and beforehand that include things like uniforms, watches, weapon blueprints, or variants, though entirely cosmetic, executions, likely camos, and other cosmetics like weapon charms, and things like that. There's already a ton of things that would fill out a loot pool of cosmetic-only supply drops, and Infinity Ward has previously expressed interest in making a fair system for the player, and in the past they've done that. Infinite Warfare system was surprisingly fair despite no support for collections or anything like that, but instead included all DLC weapons at the base for all players with the season pass and unlockable organically based off of short challenges for players without the pass so they could unlock them as well. The rest, variants, and other in many cases pointless cosmetic items filled out those drops. We didn't see any overpowered weapons in drops, or at least not super OP, because the base variations only ever slightly differed from the variants that were in drops. No matter how the ideal base system would have worked, I think we could have all expected to see something like this happen where it turns sour, though honestly probably not as early as it may seem to be coming now at this point. I had hoped that we'd see a system continue like Infinite Warfare. I mean, you have blueprints, which that's your variants. That's cosmetic only variants that would end up being in supply drops, very similar to World War II system. What we had for weapons in supply drops there, that was variants, nothing that changed the base statistics of a weapon. So why not give the players, like in World War II, like in Infinite Warfare, a route to organically unlock those? Give the base weapons, stuff the blueprints in drops, just don't, for the love of all things, lock the actual weapons out, especially when we have an entire huge system in the game built for the sole purpose of showing off the weapons in the gunsmith. That was created to make the weapons the characters. Having weapons that you could fully customize and then putting them in drops, that would crush the entire purpose of having that gunsmith, the main point in which it was built out for. Now, as early as a couple of hours ago, right before recording this, Joel Emsley ended up putting out a developer point of view over on Reddit, talking about how, like we mentioned earlier in the video, the ones that are making these public comments, they're on the side of the player. They pour their heart and soul into this game, they want it to be as good as possible, and they're not pleased with some of the things as well. He ends up saying things like, so yes, the current drama, you're all being heard, all of it. He also ends up dropping an interesting little bit of information here saying, my ask of all of you is to focus on the information that is actually fact and not get thrown off by ill-informed people who want to make a name for themselves by spreading half-baked inflammatory rumors. Let's work the real problems together and not fairy tales of boogeymen. Now that's a little bit of an interesting shot at somebody that may be TGR, might be somebody else, but the drama of that finger pointing aside, I think it gets to the point of let's not focus on that while things are still moving in the background. When there's an actual piece of solidified fact that will suck, that's when we can talk about it, but for the time being, it seems like things are still in motion in the background. So to that end of crossing that bridge when we get there, I plead, don't do something to this game up. At the end of the day, this game at its core is what I think could be something that is a great Call of Duty. Although the future is that game's own worst enemy. What we can take away is that for the time being, those at Infinity Ward just make the game. The base was their vision from what we saw from behind closed doors events at May, all the way up until now with the beta. This was their vision, and truthfully, I think it's a hell of a good vision. But what happens after, what gets taken over as a service model, as it's being always branded, that's where it becomes dangerous. That's where these things like supply drops, that's where these things like exclusivity BS come into play and can ruin that base vision of what the artists behind the game had in mind. The business end is always where the problems will arise, and at the end of the day, I don't know how much of it's going to get affected, but it's scary, not gonna lie. So I'm gonna try and be optimistic in terms of the base core of the game, as I have with the past year. I really did enjoy what I played here out of Modern Warfare, everything from all the way back at the beginning up until the beta. I had a blast with it, and I'm very excited to see what the campaign holds. I'm very excited to see some of the classic characters come back in a riveting narrative, but we're definitely a lot closer to that borderline now than I had ever really hoped. I didn't want to see this turn into another Black Ops 4, but maybe that's inevitable. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Chime in there. What do you guys think here of this, whether that be exclusivity, the DLC model in terms of supply drops, or whatever it may be? Also, what do you think about the fact now that it seems like because of this year exclusivity, that we don't have any timed exclusives elsewhere in the game? Is that something that you like and maybe is something that is a little passed over because of that 1 year exclusivity? I don't know. Whatever it is, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare, all things updates, news, information, tips, tricks, all that good stuff. We got you covered here on the channel. So if any of that interests you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best place to get connected outside of YouTube. Probably live on both those. So if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. So let's head out of the way. Thank you guys all so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.